This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, hi everyone. Good morning. Today we are going to discuss about a new concept called namespace. Okay, but before we discuss the concept, let me rewind what we discussed in the previous session. So in the previous session, we learned how to. We saw one example of visitor. Okay, we created a visitor, and in that visitor, we did not use inline XSDs. We defined the XSDs as external documents and imported them into visitor. Okay, and we discussed the import statement and we prepared the abstract visitor. This is what we discussed, and then we discussed about something called user-defined keywords and predefined keywords in XML, XSD, Wisdom. In 3 different documents, we discussed about what are all the user-defined keywords, what are all the predefined keywords. This is what we discussed, correct? So continuation to that, let me, this user-defined keywords and predefined keywords concept, we actually need it for namespace. We'll see what is this namespace concept, okay? Guys, when we are talking about namespace, there are 3 types of namespaces. Target namespace, and then XMLNS. XMLNS, full form is XML namespace. And the third one, default namespace. Default namespace. So there are 3 types of namespaces: target namespace, XMLNS, default namespace. So generally this XMLNS, people call it as namespace in regular usage. In regular usage, they read it as namespace. Read it as namespace, okay? Of course, all 3 are namespaces only, but different types of namespaces, they have their own purpose. Any questions till now? Okay, so let me go to the example. If you see on my screen, there is an XSD and there is an XML. Okay, can you confirm? Can you tell me, is this XML is valid XML or not? Is this valid XML or not? Come on, guys, speak out.
Yes, sir, valid.
Unmute your mics and let me know, is it valid or not?
Valid.
Valid, right? This is a valid XML. Why it is a valid XML? Because the XML is following XSD. XML is following its definition. XML is following its definition. Okay, for that reason, we considered this XML as valid XML. Now, let's talk about the user-defined and predefined keywords. In this XML, how many predefined keywords are there? In this XML, how many predefined keywords are there? Come on. Tell me, guys.
One, sir. Order request.
Okay, you want to read out from the beginning? Yeah, tell me from the first one. First user-defined keyword.
Order request.
Order request. Then
Order ID.
Order ID.
Then
Customer name.
Customer name.
Item one cost.
Item one cost.
Item one cost. Item two cost.
So total 5 predefined keywords we used in XML. This point is clear, correct? We used 5 predefined keywords in XML, but the question is where they were defined. I'm saying that these 5 keywords are predefined keywords. Okay, so if they are predefined keywords, that means they were defined somewhere. They were defined somewhere. Is that right? So what is that? Where these 5 keywords were defined?
In XSD, sir. Order request.
In XSD, sir.
So these 5 keywords, The 5 predefined keywords which I am using in XML are defined in XSD. Are defined in XSD. Clear? Yes?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So these 5 predefined keywords were defined in XSD. Then what we do, see, there is a logical relationship we need to manage here. Okay. So this is XML. This is XML. And we have XSD. We have XSD. In XSD, we defined set of keywords, user defined keywords. Okay, in XSD we defined set of user defined keywords. In XML, we used predefined keywords. Is this clear? Is the font clear for everybody? Is the font clear? Okay. If you want, I will a little bit increase this. Okay. So in XSD, we define user defined keywords. User defined keywords. In XML, we use predefined keywords. Concentrate, guys. Concentrate here. Don't get deviated. Just concentrate. I'm muting everybody's mic. Okay. So what will happen? There is when you are defining the keywords in XSD, what we do, we have to maintain something called target namespace. Target namespace. Every XSD document will have a target namespace, which is nothing but a user defined keyword. Just a user defined keyword, not more than that. That means I will say ABC. Okay, a target namespace will be maintained in XSD for user defined keywords. If you have user defined keywords in your document, you need to maintain target namespace. It is just a user defined keyword. Okay. See, every XSD document has a document name, correct? So this document has a document name, let's say request.xsd. This document has a document name request.xsd. The same document will have a logical name called target namespace. This document, XSD document, has a physical name, which is called request.xsd in my current example. And the same XSD will have a logical name. Target namespace is also called as logical name. So what is the logical name of this document? What is the logical name of this document?
Yes, ABC.
ABC. The logical name of the document is ABC. Okay. Now,
Sir, I have a small doubt, sir.
yes, go ahead.
Logical name is XYZ కూడా తీసుకోవచ్చా సార్?
I said user defined.
Yes, sir.
User defined means anything, any name.
Anything.
That's it. Any name,
Okay.
any string, any keyword you can use. Okay. So now the document
Okay,
physical name is request.xsd and the document logical name is ABC. Okay. So target namespace is called as logical name of the document. Okay. Let me put it in this target namespace. Okay, this is okay, this guy we can call it as target namespace. Okay, I'm just writing in a short form, TNS, okay, is also called as logical name of the document, or TNS also called as logical package structure of the document. Okay, so we just remember this lines. Target namespace is called as logical name of the document or logical package structure of the document. That means there is no physical representation, it's a logical. Okay, just visualize it. Okay, now what happened, this logical document, it will be loaded into memory. Okay, it will be loaded into memory. Let me put it in the other way. So it will be loaded into memory with the keywords what we defined. Okay, this is the logical space, logical package structure, logical space. Okay, so now what happened, when you define some keyword, in your XSD, any user defined keyword in your XSD, that at runtime, when you are running the program at runtime, your logical key, the keyword what you defined will be loaded into this logical space. Okay, and when you are using an XML, the definition will be retrieved from this logical space. Okay, here we are storing the definition, and here we are retrieving the definition. Retrieve the definition. Okay, so what is the name of this logical space, sir? What is the name of this logical space? In our example, as per our example, the logical space is nothing but target namespace, which is ABC. The at runtime, just visualize when the program is running, there is an XSD, there is an XML. Okay, how that connected with each other, that we are trying to understand. Okay, so what happened? When you create an XSD, that XSD we will give a physical name, and we also give a logical name. That logical name is nothing but target namespace. At runtime, this target namespace creates a logical space, and it will store the keywords what you defined. Okay, in our example, if you take this current example, in the XSD, how many keywords we defined? Order request, order ID, customer name. So few keywords we defined. Okay, that definition will be loaded here. Order request, which contains, sorry, order request, which contains, what happened? Okay, let me write this again. So I have order request, which contains few keywords, order ID, something like this. Okay, this way we defined some keywords here. Order request, order ID. So we defined some user defined keywords in XSD. At runtime, the definition of the user defined keyword loaded into logical space. Okay, from this logical space, your XML will retrieve the definition. Your XML will retrieve the definition. Are you clear what I'm saying here? There are two activities. One is storing the definition, another is retrieving the definition. Okay, so when to store the definition, we need target namespace. To store the definition, we need target namespace. To retrieve the definition, we need namespace. we need namespace, the same logical name. We need namespace to retrieve the definition. We need target namespace to store the definition. Any questions in these two lines? Two lines. Target namespace is to store the definition. Namespace or XMLNS is to retrieve the definition. So any questions, guys? Any questions?
No, sir.
No? Okay, now go to example and see how it will work. Okay, in our example, so in the XSD, what we need? In XSD, so we have now two options, target namespace and XMLNS. In XSD, what we need? In XSD.
Target namespace.
In XSD, we need target namespace. In XML, what we need?
XMLNS.
XMLNS. In XML, we need XMLNS. In XSD, we need target namespace. Let's see how we need to implement programmatically. This is a diagram, right? How we need to do this in programmatical format. So in XSD, we need to have a target namespace. What I will do, so the target namespace, we need to follow the syntax for anything, right? So in the XSD, this is how you need to use the target namespace. Let me show you. See, this is the spelling target namespace, and there are no keyword, no white spaces, and it's a single keyword. N is capital. Okay, this is the keyword you need to use in the root element of XSD. What is the root element of XSD? Schema. Schema is the root element of XSD. Okay. What is the value of target namespace, sir? It's a user-defined keyword. Can I say XYZ?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Okay. Now tell me, guys, what is the physical name of this XSD document? Physical name of this XSD document?
Request schema document.xsd.
Schema doc.xsd. Request schema doc.xsd, the file name. Okay. What is the logical name of this XSD?
XYZ.
XYZ. The logical name of this XSD is XYZ. Okay. Now, as a developer, when I am creating this XML, I will know which XSD I am following, correct or not? As a developer, when I am creating the XML, I must know which XSD I am following. So when I am creating this XML, I know this is the XSD I am following. Request schema doc.xsd I am following. So for this XSD document, what is the logical name it contains? I can able to see what is the target namespace in this XSD document. Now, while preparing the XML, I must use XMLNS in my XML document for all predefined keywords. See, in XSD, order request is user defined keyword. In XML, order request is predefined keyword. Where it is defined? It is defined in XSD. To connect these two things, this element order request is a predefined keyword in XML, and it is defined in request schema doc.xsd. To maintain that connectivity, we have to maintain the namespace. We have to maintain the XMLNS namespace is equal to, what is the name? What is the logical name?
XYZ.
XYZ. Sir, can I change it as ABC?
No, sir.
Is it allowed?
No.
No, sir.
XMLNS
No, sir.
is not user defined. XMLNS is not user defined. XMLNS is predefined. You should target namespace is user defined. Suppose if target namespace is ABC, then I need to modify XMLNS as ABC. Any questions till now? Any questions? But while we are using XMLNS, you have to maintain this XMLNS for every predefined keyword. It's not just for one predefined keyword, it is for every predefined keyword. So customer name, XMLNS ABC, Item 1 cost XMLNS ABC. Item 2 cost XMLNS ABC. You have to maintain the XMLNS for every predefined keyword. It's not one for a document. Any questions, sir? Any questions as of now?
No, sir.
No.
No, sir.
Okay, this is clear. Now what happened? By looking into this XML, we understand, okay, order request is a predefined keyword and it is defined in a document whose logical name is ABC. Order ID is a predefined keyword and the definition of this keyword, we can get it from ABC. Definition of this keyword, we can get it from ABC logical document. ABC logical document is nothing but request schema doc. Any questions here? Any questions?
No, sir.
No. So what happened? Why we want to maintain this relation between XSD and XML? We'll see one example. Okay. We'll see the use case. Why we really need it. Let me open one image. Let me open this guy with Paint. Okay. Now see this, guys. Why we need to have this connectivity and what is the advantage? We'll see now. Suppose I have a web service. In this web service, we have interface, we have web service body. This WSDL interface is nothing but WSDL. WSDL can import XSDs. You know that concept, right? WSDL can import XSDs. I'm saying XSD1, XSD2. Okay. You may have XSD3, XSD4 as well in your program. Okay. So this is part of your WSDL only. XSD is also part of your WSDL. It's not out of your program, correct? Because we saw an example, WSDL, which is importing XSDs. Okay. Now what happened? There is a customer or a user. When I'm saying user, what is this? Okay. Let me take this guy. Okay. There is a user who submits request and who gets the response. Guys, when I said user or client, it may be a human. A human can test your web service. It can be a Java program. A Java program is sending input to your web service and getting the output from your web service. I mean Java program, .NET program, any program. Okay. Your client can be a web application. Okay, your client can be a mobile application. Your client can be anything. Your client can be a human. Your client, I mean, when I'm saying client, that means the person or the program who will supply the input, to your program and who will receive the output from your program. Okay, so the input and output of your program is always in XML format, correct? Always in XML format. So your web service will process only valid XMLs. What is the benefit of valid XML? Suppose, I mean, if we prepare the valid XML that follows the definition, even 100 people prepare valid XML, all 100 people will prepare the XML in the same format. If there is no concept called definition, then everybody creates the XML in their own format, which can be well formed but not valid. But a web service program needs valid XML. Web service program cannot process invalid XMLs. it process only valid XML. So then what happened when a customer sends the input XML, when a client sends the input XML, that XML will go to the web service, and in the web service, before processing the data, we may have some business logic here, right? In the body of the web service, we may have some business logic that need to process the data which is coming in the input. Okay, before processing the data, web service want to confirm whether provided XML is valid or not. Provided XML is valid or not. So how the validation process will be performed? So there is something called parser. There is something called parser. So parser is a program. We no need to do anything, guys. It's an inbuilt program, comes along with application server. It is part of our application server. What this guy will do, this parser will validate. This guy validate this XML with respect to XSD. But the point here is my web service program can have more than one XSD. Not only one XSD, it can have multiple XSDs as per the need. Agree or not? In a WSDL, how many XSDs we can define or import? Is there any limitation?
No, sir. We can
No,
import
sir.
any.
No limitation, sir. We can use any number
No
of
limitation,
XSDs.
right? Let's assume in this example we have 100 XSDs. Okay, then parser want to compare, parser want to validate this XML with respective XSD. If there is no connectivity between these two documents, okay, suppose if you see this example, by looking into this example, what we understand, okay, XSD logical name, XSD target namespace is ABC, and these elements are from ABC definition. So there is a connectivity. Suppose if the connectivity is not there, let's assume I have 10 XMLs and 10 XSDs, we miss the connectivity, correct? If we have only one XSD and one XML, we can easily identify. But if you have 10 XSDs and 10 XMLs, then connecting these XML and XSD documents become little difficult. Yes or no? I don't say it is impossible, but it will be little difficult. But instead of that, if you maintain this logical connectivity between these two documents, it will be easy for this guy. It will be easy for this parser, okay, to compare this XML whether it is valid or not. Okay, it will check with the XSD. Any questions? Okay, so how parser will perform the validation? Let's go to the example. Sir, parser will perform the validation on each element. It's not on document. Parser is not going to perform the validation on document. Parser will perform the validation on each element. Okay, let me show you the process. I'm just modifying my XML just to tell you something. Okay, now what parser will do, how the parser will work, how the parser validates your XML document. Okay, so at runtime parser validates element by element. Okay, element by element. Let's assume parser started its work. It started its work with the first element. What is the first element? Order request. Parser will perform series of steps. Okay, so now order request. Step number 1, occupy an element to perform validation, or identify an element to perform validation. So what is the element we identified? What is the element we identified?
Order request.
Order request. Step number 1 completed. Step number 2, is there any XMLNS in that current element? In the current element. So current element is order request. In the current element, do we have XMLNS?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, we have XMLNS. In the current element, we have XMLNS, and the name of the XMLNS is, the value of the XMLNS is ABC. Okay. Step number 2 completed. Step number three. Parser identifies the XSD whose logical name is ABC. Okay, parser identifies the XSD. There are 100 XSDs. Okay, parser identifies the XSD where logical name of the document is ABC. Which XSD has logical name of ABC? Tell me the XSD
Target
name.
namespace.
Request schema
Request
dot
schema
dot XSD. Logical name is ABC. Okay. Now step number 3 done. Step number 3. What is step number 3? Identify the XSDs. We may have 100 XSDs. Out of 100 XSDs, parser is going to identify the XSD whose logical name is ABC. Okay. Step number 3 completed. Step number 4. Parser will check the definition of order request. Parser will check the definition of identified element. Which element we want to validate? Which element parser want to validate? That element's definition, it will check in XSD. As per XSD, order request must be a complex element, correct? As per XSD, order request must be a complex element. Okay, if you see the XML order request, is it a complex element or simple element in XML?
Complex
It
element.
is complex element. That means your XML order request element is following definition of order request in XSD. So this is following the definition, correct?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes. Now, this is how parser validates each element. Let's assume, let's think about this element, how parser will react. Okay. Step number 1, parser identifies an element to validate. So what is the element we identified now? What is the element parser identified now?
Item 3 cost.
Item 3 cost. Step number 1 completed. Step number 2, check for a namespace. Check for XMLNS in the current element. Do we have XMLNS in the current element?
Yes, sir.
What is the value of XMLNS?
ABC.
ABC. Step number 2 completed. Check for XMLNS in the current element and get the value. What is the XMLNS is? Okay. Step number 2 completed. Step number 3. Now parser identifies the XSD whose logical name is ABC. Step number 3. So that means parser identifies request schema dot XSD. Clear, sir? Step number 3
Yes, sir.
completed. Now step number 4, parser will try to get the definition of identified element. What is the identified element? Item 3 cost. So, and parser went to the XSD document whose logical name is ABC and try to identify the definition of item 3 cost. Sir, do we have item 3 cost element in XSD?
No, sir.
No, item 3 cost element was not defined in the ABC XSD. Correct or not?
Yes,
Speak
sir.
out. Okay, there is no definition. Item 3 cost was not defined. If the item 3 cost was not defined in the pointed XSD, then this element is called as invalid element. It is not valid element. Parser decides that there is no definition available in XSD for item 3 cost. So this element is invalid. This element is invalid. If one element is invalid in XML, the total XML is invalid. If one element is invalid in XML, the whole XML will be considered as invalid. Any questions? Any questions?
No, sir.
No. So you understand the relation between XSD and XML and how the validation performed by parser. Clear, guys? How
Yes, sir.
the validation performed by the parser. Okay. Suppose, let's say this element. Let's ask parser to validate this element. So what is the step number 1? Identify the element which we need to
Element.
validate. So which element we identified?
Item cost.
Item
Item
1
1 cost.
cost. Item 1 cost. Step number 1 completed. Step number 2. Do we have XMLNS in the identified element? Do we have XMLNS
Yes.
in the identified element? Tell me, guys.
Yes, yes sir. ABC.
Sir, we
Yes,
have.
we have XMLNS in the identified element. That is ABC. XMLNS is equal to ABC. Step number 2 completed. Step number 3, parser will identify an XSD. Parser will identify an XSD whose logical name is ABC. Parser will identify an XSD whose logical name is ABC. Which XSD document logical name is ABC? Request schema
Schema dot
doc.xsd.
dot XSD.
Okay, step number 3 completed. Step number 4, parser will try to get the definition of the current element. Parser will try to get the definition of current element from XSD. So do we see the definition of item 1 cost in XSD? Do we see the definition
Yes
of
sir.
item 1 cost in XSD?
Yes sir.
Yes, we can able to see that. So as per XSD, item 1 cost has a definition. And what is the definition? Item 1 cost must be a simple element and the data must be an integer. So is our XML following the definition or not? Item 1 cost must be a
Yes sir.
simple
Following.
element and the data must be an integer data. So it is following. So that means item 1 cost element is a valid element. So parser will perform validation on each element. And if all elements are valid, then the XML is valid. At least one element is invalid, that XML will be considered as invalid XML. Any questions? Any questions?
No, sir.
No sir.
No. Okay. So now let me improve this document. The concept will remain same. I just want to improve the document. Okay. Sir, I said the value of target namespace is a user defined keyword. So I'm using something called ABC. Can I use MNO?
Yes sir.
Can I use 123abc.com?
Yes, sir. Because it
Yes
is
sir.
different.
Any string you can use, okay? But as per industry standards, we define a target namespace in this format. Okay, I will give you an example. Generally, we define the target namespace like this: http://abc.com, okay, slash. What is this XSD meant for? Suppose, let's say I made it for training, and this is my June, okay, June batch, and this is for order XSD, order request XSD. Okay, so this looks like an URL, correct? Looks like a URL, but no, it's not URL. It is just a user defined keyword. Of course, the look gives you a feel that it's a URL, but it's not any URL. If I click on this, it won't route to any website or something. Okay, it's not a URL. We call it as URI, not URL. Okay, it is URI. So of course it is a user defined string. What I will do, instead of simply writing ABC, it is the industry standard what we follow. Okay, but still the complete string is user defined keyword only. So instead of writing ABC, I will write it as the big string. Okay, I will tell you the reason why we need to follow this syntax. Okay, when we have only one example, it's very simple to write ABC, but when we have hundreds of XSDs, it will be a little difficult. I will tell you what is the purpose of this naming convention. Okay, so what is the advantage and benefit of this naming convention? So instead of writing ABC, a small keyword, I wrote a big string. We are calling it as URI. Okay, any question? Universal resource identifier. Okay, universal resource identifier. So any question? So I renamed the ABC with this URI. So what is the impact? Where I need to modify?
In XML,
In
sir.
XML.
In XML also we need to do the changes.
XMLNS. Yes.
Okay, all the ABC must be replaced with the URI. All the ABC must be replaced with the URI. Okay, everything will remain same. The concept, the validation process, parser job, everything will remain the same. Okay, but instead of using a small user-defined keyword, we are using URI. Any questions till now? Any questions? No? Okay. Now, if you see this XML, fine, we created the XML, which is convenient for parser to perform the validation process. It is very convenient for the parser, correct? So, but because of the usage of URI, you are using the URI in your XML, that causes increase in the size of the document. Your document size increased, right? The text got increased. Okay, KBs will be increased. Maybe earlier 2 KB, now it will be 6 KB. I'm just giving an example. This document not really 6 KB. I'm just giving example. Okay, earlier this document size is 2 KB, but the document almost size got increased, right? 3 times or 4 times the size got increased when I introduced this URI in every element. Okay, so to do something better, what we can do, we can implement this rule. We can implement one more rule. The rule is when parent element and child element are having same namespace, same XMLNS. When parent element and child element are having same XMLNS, we no need to write the XMLNS in the child element. Is it clear, sir? When parent element and child element have same namespace, same XMLNS, you no need to write the XMLNS in the child element. Is the point clear?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So order request, order ID is the child element. Order request, customer name is the child element. Okay. Item 1 cost, also the child element with the same XMLNS. Item 2 also contains same XMLNS. Item 3 not required, it's invalid, right? So now if you see this example, we have XMLNS in the root element, and we are not writing XMLNS in the sub-elements. We are not writing XMLNS in the sub-elements because parent element and child element, if they have same XMLNS, you no need to mention the XMLNS in the child element. Is the point clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so now if this is the XML parser want to validate, and how it will do, same process it will follow, and it also implement the rule what we implemented. Okay, let's say parser want to validate order request. Step number 1, identify an element which we want to validate, which parser want to validate. Okay, identify an element. So order request identified, step 1. Step 2, identify, do we have XMLNS in the current element? Do we have XMLNS in the current element? Yes, we have XMLNS. Then get the value. So instead of reading the complete record, I am saying order request. Okay, instead of reading the complete string, I'm saying order request. So the logical name is order request. Okay, step number 3, identify an XSD. Parser identifies an XSD where XSD logical name is order request. So parser control comes to this document, comes to this XSD document. Correct? Step number 3 completed. Step number 4, parser try to identify definition of current element. So the current element is order request. As per the XSD, as per the definition document, order request must be a complex element. If you check the XML, yes, order request was used as a complex element. So order request is valid. The same process what we discussed earlier. Now go to the next element. Let's assume parser want to validate order ID. Okay, parser want to validate order ID. Then step number 1, identify the element which parser want to validate. Okay, what is the element identified? Order ID. Step number
Order ID.
2. Step number 2, check, do we have XMLNS in the current element? Do we have
Yes, sir.
XMLNS in the current element? In the current element?
No, sir. Current element. Having
In the
parent element, we are having.
current element, there is no namespace. Parser is checking, do we have XMLNS in the current element? Answer is no. Current
No,
element
sir.
has no namespace. Current element has no XMLNS. Then if current element has no namespace, parser control goes to parent element and get the namespace. Okay, this is what the parser behavior. If the current element has no namespace, if the current element has no XMLNS, then what parser will do? It will go to parent element and get the XMLNS. What is the parent element of order ID?
Order
What is the
request.
parent element of order ID? Guys, come on, speak out.
Order request, sir.
Order request. The parent element of order ID is order request, and there is a namespace called order request. Okay, there is a
Yes, sir.
namespace called order request. So guys, instead of reading the entire string, I'm reading the order request, last keyword. Okay,
Okay, sir.
current element don't have XMLNS, so immediately parser control goes to the parent element and get the namespace, get the XMLNS. From here, the regular process. So control goes to the respective XSD and check for the definition of current element. Check for the definition of current element. So do we have the definition in the XSD for order ID? Yes.
Yes, sir.
Have order ID definition in XSD. As per definition, order ID is a simple element and the expected data must be an integer. Is it following the definition or not? Is the element, XML element, following the definition or not? So if it
Yes,
is
sir.
following, parser confirms that it is a valid XML. If it is not following, parser confirms that it is a invalid XML. Any questions till now? Any questions? Okay.
No,
So
sir.
what we, yeah. So guys, it's not over. Namespace concept not over. There is a lot we need to discuss. But are we clear till this point? This is the basic namespace concept. We'll go advanced things. Okay, we'll discuss advanced concepts as well. But this is very basic. So any questions till this point? Any questions? So hope you understand what is the target namespace, what is XMLNS, in which document we need to write the target namespace, in which document we need to write the XMLNS. This concept is clear, right? Four questions.
Yes.
With today's session, you must be able to answer 4 questions. What is target namespace? What is XMLNS? In which document we need to write the target namespace? In which document we need to write the XMLNS? These 4 questions you must answer. Are you able to answer these 4 questions or not?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah, let
Yes,
me
sir.
quickly rewind it. Target namespace. Target namespace is a logical name of a document. We should use target namespace in a document where we are defining user-defined keywords. Is it clear? I'm not saying it is only XSD because it's not limited to only XSD and XML. This concept is not just for XSD and XML. Going forward, we'll see this concept for so many other documents. Okay, but today we took the example of XML and XSD. So observe the definition, what I'm saying. In which document we have to write the target namespace? In the document where we are defining at least one user-defined keyword, that document is eligible to have a target namespace. In a document, if we have at least one user-defined keyword, see in the current XSD document, we have 5 user-defined keywords. Okay, If you have at least one user-defined keyword, then the document is eligible to maintain the target namespace. So target namespace is considered as logical name of the document or logical package structure of the document or logical space of the document. Okay. Now come to XMLNS. So XMLNS is XMLNS will help you to retrieve the definitions. XMLNS will help you to retrieve the definitions. In which document we need to write XMLNS? The answer is, if your document contains at least one predefined keyword, if your document contains at least one predefined keyword, in that document, you have to maintain XMLNS for that specific predefined keyword. For every specific predefined keyword, you need to maintain the XMLNS for every predefined keyword. Okay, target namespace is not that way. Target namespace is for entire document. Target namespace is for entire document, but for namespace is for each predefined keyword. Each predefined keyword must have XMLNS. Okay. Now, answer this question. Everyone, try to answer this question. Can we have target namespace in valid XML? Can we have target namespace in valid XML? Answer this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Why?
Because it following an XSD definition, sir.
What? Anyone else? Can we have target namespace in valid XML? Sir, every keyword is important. Okay, so I don't answer this question. You need to answer me. Okay, let me rewind. Let me rewind. Which document contains target namespace? Which document is eligible to have target namespace?
XSDs.
Document which has the elements.
Answer this. Which document is eligible to have target namespace? Document must have at least one user defined keyword. Can you give me an example document? XSD?
Order request.
Yes.
XSD? XSD
Sir.
document, we define keywords, we define user defined keywords. So XSD document is eligible to have a target namespace. XSD document is eligible to have a target namespace. Agree? Sir, please,
Yes,
please
sir.
interact
Yes,
and
sir.
let me know.
Yes,
If you
sir.
don't understand, not an issue, say I don't understand. Okay, the question is, which document is eligible to have a target namespace? The document must have at least one user defined keyword. Document must have at least one user defined keyword. So such document, any example for that, we can consider an XSD. Any XSD. If you take any XSD, we define complex elements, we define simple elements. Complex element name and simple element name is user defined keyword. Agree? So XSD is eligible to have a target namespace, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Which document is eligible? Which document is eligible to have XMLNS? Come on. Document must have
At
least
At
one
least one
least
predefined keyword. At least one predefined keyword. Okay. At least one predefined keyword. So example doc. We can consider valid XML.
XML.
Consider any valid XML, not XML, valid XML. Valid XML doc. You can take any valid XML doc. It is eligible to have XMLNS. Okay. Is the 2 points are clear? Only 2 points, nothing else. Just simply 2 points.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now my question. Now I will put my question. Can we have target namespace in valid XML?
Yes, sir.
Can we
Yes, sir.
have target namespace inside valid XML?
No, sir.
Why? What is the reason? Why it is no?
Because in valid XML, all are predefined elements from
Perfect.
access.
In a valid XML document, all are predefined keywords. When we go for TNS, when we go for target namespace,
Only for user and
at least one user defined keyword. At least one user defined keyword, correct? But valid XML, if you observe a valid XML, do we have user defined keywords? At least one.
No, sir.
No, we don't have user
No,
defined
sir.
keywords. Suppose if you have user defined keyword, let's take this
All are
example.
predefined keywords.
See this example. Here, item 3 cost is a user defined keyword. Will this XML considered as valid XML?
No,
Item
sir.
3 is a user defined keyword. And this XML is not a valid XML, it is invalid XML because item 3 cost is user defined
Item
keyword.
3 cost is
Yes.
Correct. So, but my
Yes, sir.
question is about valid XML. My question is about valid XML. That means this one. Do we have at least one user defined keyword in a valid XML?
No, sir.
No, sir.
No,
Keep it.
we don't have user defined keywords in a valid XML. So we are not allowed to write target namespace in a valid XML.
Sir.
Concept set, understand the concept. Okay, don't just by heart, listen and by heart, not that. You should understand the concept. It's a very simple question. So can we have target namespace inside the valid XML? Answer is no, because valid XML never contains predefined
user
keywords. Sorry, valid
But keyword.
XML never contains user defined keywords. Answer is no, because
oh, shit.
you should give a reason. When you are telling an answer, you should give a reason. Answer is no, because valid XML
Valid XML
never contains
never contain
The different keywords.
user
user-defined
defined keyword.
keywords. Valid XML never contain user-defined keywords. So TNS not allowed. TNS not allowed. Target namespace not allowed. Is it clear?
Sir.
Yes? Done.
Yes, sir.
Now tell me one more question. Answer this question. Okay. Can we have XMLNS in XSD document? Can we have
No, sir.
XMLNS in XSD document? Okay, tell me the reason why it is no.
Because
Because
it
XSD
has
have
at
user
least
defined
one
keyword.
predefined keywords.
Because
XSD have at least one predefined
Must have
keyword.
at least one predefined keyword. Yes.
don't we have predefined keywords in XSD?
In XSD we
No,
have
sir.
predefined keywords.
XSD, don't we have predefined keywords? Think. Yesterday, what in the previous session we discussed it, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We have predefined
XSD
keywords,
contains
element, name, complex.
Element
XSD
name.
contains
These
Yeah.
are predefined
set
keywords.
of
At least
predefined keywords, set of user-defined keywords, both. XSD contains set of predefined keywords, set of user-defined keywords.
user defined keywords.
Okay, so XSD
So
in this XSD, if you see, the user-defined keywords are order request, order ID, customer name, item 1 cost, item 2 cost. These are user-defined
item
keywords,
to
5 user-defined keywords. What about all other keywords? They are predefined only. Schema,
predefined keywords.
predefined. Target namespace,
Complex
predefined. Element, name, complex type, sequence, element, name, type, integer. These all are predefined keywords only. Guys, you understand it or not? These all are predefined keywords. So now
Yes, sir.
answer this question. Now answer this question. Can we have XMLNS in XSD document?
Yes, sir.
Sir.
Yes.
Yes.
Hello, sir.
Answer is yes. Yes, we have because
Because in
XSD
XSD contains at least one
XSD contains predefined keywords.
predefined codes.
XSD contains predefined keywords, so it is allowed. It is allowed to have a XMLNS. But what XMLNS we can write in XSD, we'll see in the next session. But the answer is yes, we can have XMLNS in XSD. That we will see what XMLNS we need to write in XSD, how to write that in XSD, we'll see. Okay. Now the next question. Can we have target namespace in WSDL document? Can we have target namespace in WSDL document?
Yes, sir.
Why? If the answer is yes, why?
Because
In
it
Vita also we
contains
can use a different
user different keywords, sir.
WSDL document contains user-defined keywords, so target namespace is allowed in WSDL.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now the next question. Is XMLNS allowed in WSDL?
Sir.
Yes, sir. Allowed.
Answer is yes. What is the reason?
Because it
It
has predefined
also Vita
keywords.
also have contains predefined
WSDL
elements.
contains predefined keywords, so WSDL also allows XMLNS. But how to write XMLNS in WSDL, what value we need to write, we'll see that little later. But try to understand this target namespace and XMLNS concept is not just meant for XSD and XML. This is meant for any XML family document. This namespace concept is meant for any XML family document. XML, XSD, WSDL, XSLT, XQuery. There are so many XML family documents. Going forward, we see in all XML family documents, this namespace concept must be applied in a way. If the document contains at least one user-defined keyword, we have to maintain target namespace. If the document contains at least one predefined keyword, the document should maintain XMLNS. It's not restricted to XSD and XML. It can be any document, any XML family document. Is it clear? Any questions?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Clear.
So how to apply this XMLNS concept and target namespace concept in XSD, WSDL, or any other document, we'll discuss in the next session. Okay. So let me stop the recording.